not sure if you saw, but I feel like you would appreciate my hat. So it's a Mets hat, but and I don't want to take it off all the way because my hair looks terrible, but I'll do it anyway.
Oh wow, a little Seinfeld logo on the side. Where'd that one come from? It's like Seinfeld
Um,
Day.
no, just
Or this is purchase.
like an Instagram ad. They
Yeah, yeah.
always
I get
they
those too, but the
yeah
Mets and Yankees ones don't appeal to me, and unfortunately, that's all the Seinfeld stuff there is.
yeah. Well, there might be an O's one there,
Oh,
but
that's
no,
true. Yeah, yeah. Because Elaine's an O's fan.
yeah, and famously doesn't take off her O's hat in
Yeah.
that one episode. But no Nat stuff.
No,
No,
the
there's
Nationals did
no.
not exist when Seinfeld was on.
That's wild. I guess it would have been the
The
Expos.
Expos, yeah,
Yeah. Damn. But yeah, I thought you would. I thought you would appreciate
pretty
that.
good. Yeah, a couple years ago, when I was still working at the Herald, our Marlins beat writer was up in. They were covering. He was, Marlins were playing the Mets,
Hmm.
and it was Seinfeld Day at the ballpark, and the giveaway was like a Mets jersey tee that had like Seinfeld on the back,
Yeah.
and he got me one. I think I gave it to Sam. Literally have never seen her wear it, but she was appreciative of it.
Yeah. You guys, okay, you guys are big Seinfeld people, right?
Yes, huge. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Um, I didn't get into it until very recently, so I feel like I missed all of the Seinfeld references that you and Tim and all of our other friends would make while we were in
Yeah,
college.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I watch pretty much every day
Yeah.
because I still have cable, so that's just like all like on Comedy Central. There's just always either Seinfeld or The Office playing. So
Yeah. And on like TNT or
TN
probably
or
TBS,
TBS. That was like when I was a kid. It was like
it was always
for
Seinfeld and
dinner
then
we would watch
Friends.
like a episodes of Seinfeld or whatever,
Yeah.
and then Friends. We were never Friends people in our household.
Interesting. Friends is like the more international show.
Yeah,
Like people from all over the globe, like when they think of the States, they're like, it's Friends.
yeah,
It's Joey.
exactly. Yeah, I don't
Um,
know why we it was not as popular in our house. Um,
yeah. I mean my sisters and I watched a good amount of Friends. My parents aren't Seinfeld people at all. So like there was no Seinfeld for me growing up. But
mhm,
then, I got to a point where I was like, oh, I'll check it out.
yeah,
And now I'm like,
living in the city, like right,
yeah.
it's obviously a different era, but I feel like a lot of it's still like I'm not like when I find out people who are like not East Coast people don't like Seinfeld, I kind of get it. Not that
Hmm.
I mean I lived in New York for one summer, but it's just that's
You're
like
still
our
you're an East
culture.
Coast
It's
guy.
our culture.
Yeah. And I was always a big Curb fan. Like I've loved Curb
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yep,
since college. Probably high school.
yep.
Um,
Curb's been on. Yep, it was on. I mean, it's over now, I guess, but it was on for like
yeah.
20 years, basically, on and off.
When I started working, a lot of my coworkers were also big Seinfeld people, and the thing about Seinfeld is that there's a Seinfeld reference for like everything
Literally
that
everything.
happens,
Yeah,
and
and if not, there's a curb reference.
yeah. uh, so I was like, there was one day where I made a joke as I was leaving, and someone was like, "Oh, you're just like George, when he always has to leave the office or like leave a room after making a joke." And I was like, "I don't know what you're talking about. That means nothing to me." And then, 5 years later, I finally watched the episode, and I was like, I get all of these references
Yeah,
now. It all makes so much sense. Amazing. Well, Screenagers, we're
very
back for
normal
another episode
transition here from
from Seinfeld into Dunkirk, but the two are definitely related in a lot of ways. Uh, maybe not.
I
Whatever.
can honestly can't think of one connection between them, but maybe we'll come up with one as this episode goes. Maybe.
Yeah, that Dunkirk is the one thing that there's not a Seinfeld reference for. Maybe if we were doing JFK. Uh,
Yeah, JFK.
yeah. But joining me to talk about Seinfeld and maybe at some point talk about Dunkirk too is our favorite returning guest, the one and only Mr. David B. Wilson. Dave, welcome back. How's it going? This is what your fourth,
Fourth,
fifth?
something like that.
Yeah.
When we logged into the app that we use, my name was still saved from last time, which was Return of the King, right? Yeah, we did Return of the King.
Yeah.
It was a bad Lord of the Rings reference was or joke was saved as my name there. So yeah, it's been a little while, but I was very excited to have an excuse to rewatch this movie. Maybe like the first time I rewatched it like all the way through since seeing it
Hmm.
in theaters. I've definitely like watched parts of it, but to actually like sit down and rewatch the whole thing.
Yeah.
And I was kind of I was a little worried about how well it would work on the small screen, but I actually thought it held up really pretty well, and maybe even emphasize different parts of the movie that like you'd get different, you appreciate different things about it depending, I think, on what um, what the circumstances are in which you're watching it.
Yeah. So you watch it on a TV,
I just watched it
not
on
on a not on your iPad.
no. I never watch movies on unless I'm on like a plane, right? I'm
Yeah,
pretty strictly movies got to be at least on the TV.
at least on the TV. Maybe a computer. But even then, you can hook up an HDMI cord. The
Yeah.
other day, maybe not the other day, but like a couple weeks ago, I saw a woman on the train and she was playing Candy Crush, and in the corner of her iPhone screen, she was watching Game of Thrones, and I was like, that has to be the worst way to consume literally anything. Like not even on the full
Yeah.
like
Oh,
iPhone screen. It was a little corner while she was playing Candy Crush. And my hopes and dreams of us ever getting to a point where like everyone appreciates seeing movies on the big screen. They were kind of that was where I lost hope
yeah. I would like to think that hopefully she'd seen Game of Thrones before at least.
and was just rewatching it.
Yeah, yeah.
I hope so. I don't
It's
know,
like
man.
it's like when I'm not on TikTok, but sometimes TikTok bleeds into Instagram, and like
Hmm.
sometimes you'll see like the posts where like they have to be putting a game, like half the screen
Yeah.
has to be a game to like
Yeah.
because they just know no one's gonna pay attention to like a person talking. Maybe we should
Yeah.
have that for the video episodes of this show. You should just have the people talking in a little corner while a guy's playing
Yeah.
like Temple Run in the middle. I don't think
Or
Temple
even
Run's still around. Subway Surfers,
that's the one.
that's the one. It's basically Temple Run.
Maybe even like bigger than this show. Maybe we just do screenings of movies. Like maybe that's how we get
Oh,
people to see The
wow.
Brutalist in
Yeah.
theaters. Is just half the screen is
It's
Temple
like
Run.
a yeah.
While Adrian Brody's just, trying to figure out how to capture the American dream. Just the half of the screen is just a
That's
dude
pretty
going
good.
through Subway Surf or
Yeah.
whatever. So
We might
bleak.
have saved Hollywood.
Yeah. Imagine watching this movie with half of the screen being taken up by, although this movie is like engaging enough
Right, so that's
where
the thing, that's this movie it's for, like, a slower movie. Like, this movie has enough action. I mean, you can't not be gripped by a bunch of British dudes basically drowning for, uh, an hour and a half straight.
yeah, this okay, so you mentioned that you saw this in theaters.
Yeah,
When did this come out? 2017?
2017, yeah.
Okay. Was that so that was your only time seeing it all the way
I
through, and
think
since
so,
you've
maybe
maybe
I've
just
seen
seen
it.
bits and pieces of it?
Yeah, maybe I'd, like, watch it again, like, whenever it first would've, like, come on to streaming, or I remember I had seen it in theaters, and I remember I was, like, with a bunch of my family, like, around Christmas time that year maybe, and a bunch of people hadn't seen it, and they were watching it, and I don't know, remember if I sat down and watched the whole thing with them or, just popped in and out. But yeah, I mean, this was honestly one of the great recent movie years,
Mhm.
and definitely remember seeing it and a lot of the other movies from this year in theaters.
What else came out in
I'm
2017?
looking at the Best Picture nominees for this year, which a tough winner was The Shape of Water. Then you also
Okay.
had Call Me by Your Name, Darkest Hour. Weirdly, two like British World War II movies in the same year. Dunkirk,
Mhm,
Get Out, which I did not see actually because I don't like not a horror movie guy.
mhm.
Lady Bird,
And you hate black people.
yeah, that too. Uh, Lady Bird, Phantom Thread, The Post, and Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri.
Wow, that is a
Very good movie year.
pretty stacked year, and there were probably a bunch of other really good movies.
Florida Project was. I'm just looking through some of the other nominees for other
Oh,
awards that
wow.
year. Florida Project was that year. Um,
Stacked
yeah,
year.
really. Logan is that year.
Okay.
Obviously one of the best blockbuster movies, I guess, to come along in a while. One of the best superhero movies. Um, Icarus was the one best documentary, which is a pretty fun one about doping. Um, that I think kind of had like a sort of wow Oscar winner Kobe Bryant this year for best animated short film, Dear Basketball. Um, and The Last Jedi was this year also, which I still stand by. It's been pretty good. Baby Driver, wow, this is a great movie year. Blade Runner 2049. Um, so yeah, kind of like, I mean, we're pre-COVID, right? So 2017 and I think 2019 are kind of like two of the years I think a lot of people would point to as two of the last great movie years we've come across.
A lot of bangers for sure. I saw like 80% of the movies that you mentioned in theaters too.
Yeah, it was like a great movie theater. And actually, I came into this podcast being like I feel like a take I was like kind of probably going to roll out was that Dunkirk not winning Best Picture is probably that's probably a mistake. But you look at Shape of Water winning Best Picture was a mistake, but
Yeah.
you can make there's a lot of other movies that you could. It's not like it wasn't a no brainer that Dunkirk. It wasn't like a weak movie year where Dunkirk
Mhm.
should have easily won. But
It
you know it
it
checks a lot of
was
the boxes of like what you expect a Best Picture movie to be, except that I guess we can't name any of the characters. Um,
yeah, no memorable characters, no, like, singular great acting performance, but it clicks a lot of the other or ticks a lot of the other
yeah,
boxes. But also it's such a strong
subject
year
matter, all that kind of stuff. Yeah,
that I'm sure, like, this, Three Billboards, Darkest Hour, Get Out, maybe Lady Bird were probably all getting a lot of, like, first place
yeah,
votes, and then Shape of Water was just, like, got, like, all of, like, the 3rd or 4th place, so that's how it ended up winning, like, the based on, like, the ranked choice voting or whatever. It was, like, no one's, like, least favorite movie of the year, but no one's favorite, so was able to, like, sneak in because all of the other movies were probably just, like, taking votes away from each other.
yeah.
So that's how you get
I think it's also they've obviously changed some of the. There's like people always say the Academy voting is now much more international than it was. I think this is
Mhm.
before a lot of those changes. Where obviously, this is it was a huge hit in the United States, but I have to imagine it meant a lot more to a British audience, where it's like their war story. We have a lot of American centered World War II stories, and this is one that is distinct. It's the British story in a lot of ways
Mhm.
about World War II.
Yeah. It's a very British movie, and I think we'll obviously get into the Nolan of it all and, like, his relationship to the States and to the UK, and how that's, like, in play here in this movie specifically. Um, it is interesting when they were, like, quoting Churchill at the end, and, like, one of his last lines is, like, "Hopefully the new world will come in and, like, basically save the day,"
Hmm.
which is, like, pretty funny to watch as an American audience member to be
Yeah,
like, "Oh, this, like, sweet little movie about them just, like, not dying," and
I
we
know.
it totally reinforces all of the, like, you know, frat guy back-to-back World War champion tank tops that you see. It's just like,
Exactly.
"Yeah, America's gotta come in and, like, we're gonna finish the job." All they did was survive the Brits.
I'm
Huh.
curious. Did you ever see Darkest Hour? The
I've
Churchill
not
movie
seen
came out
Darkest
this year?
Hour.
Yeah, almost feel like I should have watched it to go with it because
Yeah,
I mean, this
probably
movie
a great
ends
delivery.
on a Churchill quote. Obviously, the last line. It's not Churchill giving the the speech, but it's
Mhm,
I don't remember which of the two characters, if it's Harry Styles or the other kid reading the newspaper, but it ends with them reading uh, Winston Churchill's speech. And I have to imagine is in like, that might be the end of Darkest Hour for all I know. Again, I've never seen
Yeah.
the movie, but, kinda crazy that those 2 came out at the same time, and obviously, um, I have to assume have pretty broad overlaps,
Yeah.
even if Dunkirk is obviously much more focused on one event.
I am interested to know what was I mean, we probably should know because we were very much so alive and adult functioning members of society to, like, know, like, what was going on in the UK. This must have been around Brexit where right? Like, when did the Brexit vote happen? I just assumed that there was
Yeah, it was
something big
around
happening.
20 the Brexit vote officially happened in 2020, but it was happening, obviously
Mhm.
it was building up to that.
Yeah. There's
2016
the idea that,
seems to be kind of the year when it got, uh, like,
like,
kinda
brought
got
to the table.
rolling a little bit, that movement.
Um, see, I'm sure, like, British people were there was, like, some sense of, I don't know, some sort of need for, like,
Yeah,
stories,
2016 was actually the Brexit vote. It didn't happen until 2020 that they actually left,
but
so
the vote happened in 16.
yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what the tie is. I'm not smart enough to make the connection, but something about, having that vote and then also, like, these stories about Britain when the UK was a dominant force, like,
Mhm,
on the global stage or whatever, even if it was just, like, surviving at Dunkirk. Um, which brings us back to Nolan because, uh, obviously, he is probably, like, the filmmaker of the 21st century, like, uh, when you go through the full list of movies in the canon, Christopher Nolan is the most represented
wow.
director, which I get, but also, um, I personally have my own issues with Nolan and his sort of, like, stature within Hollywood and 21st century filmmaking. I think that he's, like, really good. I don't know that he is at the level that we maybe put him at. This is the first Christopher Nolan movie that we're talking about on this podcast, which is pretty
Mhm,
crazy considering, again, he is
yeah,
the most represented director, and we have this is 70 plus episodes that we're at this point, and we haven't talked about Nolan.
mhm,
I will also say this is probably my favorite Christopher Nolan movie. I think that this is his best movie. I think part of that is because he leans more into his British identity than he does to his American identity. And I don't think that he's, like, been able to tap into American sensibilities the same way that he was clearly able to tap into British sensibilities here. Um, Dave, what is your relationship to Mr. or Sir Christopher Nolan?
sure,
He
I
he
think,
must
yeah,
be
he's gotta
must
be
be
knighted, right?
knighted at this point. Yeah. What's your relationship to him? And then, like, where does this movie fall in your personal rankings of his flicks?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like, The Dark Knight, when that came out, that was, like, we were both in high school probably, right when that came
Yeah.
out, so, like,
Yeah.
I mean, and that is to me still like, to me, I think Dunkirk's probably in my top 3 for him. I loved Oppenheimer, I know you're a little bit more mixed on it, um, but I think Dark Knight, Oppenheimer, and Dunkirk are probably Dark Knight's so different than those other 2 movies, but
Yeah.
obviously, uh, kinda just like a perfect action movie, even if it drags. All of his movies kinda drag a little bit in the second half. I'd say I'm not like there's obviously a stereotypical film bro, which both of us skirt up against, who, like, they just love every Christopher Nolan movie. Like Interstellar, there's a huge cult of Interstellar, for example,
Yeah.
a movie that I just saw for the first time recently, and I thought was very good. I kind of feel the same way about a lot like Inception. I think is very good, very entertaining, very watchable. The other 2 Batman movies, I remember liking Batman Begins a lot more, I think the first time I saw it than I
Mhm.
think on rewatches. So I'm kind of in the camp where I think, he gets kind of like the Steven Spielberg comparison sometimes, right? Because of the way that they're able to make movies that are both like prestigious and also like these big blockbusters. They're
Mhm.
very different, obviously. Like Christopher Nolan does really not care about characters at all, which is
Yeah.
fine. Um, but you got to go into it with that sense. So I'm not like to me, Christopher Nolan does not have a whole bunch of 5-star movies. Like I think a lot of people would probably rank it that. There's our contemporary. There's definitely people who are our contemporaries who would
Mhm.
Probably say he's their favorite director, or they have a handful of his movies and they're like 25 favorite ever. I'm not in that camp. I think I like him more than you like him. Um, but I kind of like him for like what he is. I think he's the probably the best blockbuster. I mean, it might be the best post Spielberg like blockbuster filmmaker at this point. Like unless you count like is Quentin Tarantino's kind of his own
Yeah.
thing where he makes blockbusters, but not in a traditional blockbuster kind of sense.
Yeah,
Uh,
they've sort of become blockbusters
because
because
of
they're
him,
Quentin
Quentin
Tarantino
Tarantino
movies.
movies.
Yeah.
But just in terms of like, I'm gonna make big action movies that say something. You know, they might have be kind of shallow messages. They're gonna be. I mean, all of his movies obviously are very. You can quibble with the structures of a lot of them, but they're pretty much all creative, very creative in terms of either the concept or the structuring of them. Except for really the Batman movies, which
Mhm.
again kind of exist in their own little corner, I think, of his filmography. Um, so I think he is, you know, that's kind of the way I would probably put him. I don't, I mean, I think we're both big Steve guys, but I think post Steve, he's pretty much as good as it gets in terms of making movies that, I mean, all of his movies are huge hits, obviously, at this point, and that means a lot.
Yeah.
The fact that they're
Yeah.
not bad, like there are a lot of big hits that are bad. Like
Yeah.
he could have been making Marvel movies, right? And he made out
Yeah.
the Batman movies, but other than that, he comes with his own. You know, he adapts books here and there, but for the most part, he comes with his own. He wants to do his own thing, which I think like obviously should be celebrated. It'd be nice if there were other more than just one Christopher Nolan out there, but right now he kind of stands alone.
He's the guy for sure. Um, I'm sure when we get to 2023, Oppenheimer like will be in the canon and it'll just be another notch on his belt.
Yeah,
Um, I get it, right? Like his movies, like you said, I think the comparison to Spielberg is like pretty fair.
they're very
It's
very different, but just in terms of
yeah, being able to make something that is both accessible and also you can appreciate it for the craftsmanship, like, but it's not craftsmanship just for like it's not like PTA craftsmanship where a lot of people watch and they're like, I don't know what's going on here.
yeah.
But if you're like, dialed in or, someone who is like watching a lot of movies, you're like, yeah, PTA is is an incredible filmmaker. Like you can like watch a Nolan movie and not be dialed in all of those aspects in terms of like what he's doing in terms of the craft and still walk away and be like, that was super fun. Like if you're someone who watches 4 movies a year, Christopher Nolan is like amazing,
Yeah, exactly.
He's the best filmmaker that there is, which is totally great. That's how a
For a
lot of
lot of
people
people, yeah, and a lot of people who like are movie fans, right? That's like they're like that.
Mhm.
They see maybe 4 or 5 movies a year in theaters, watch some stuff at home. Um, yeah, he's one of the few guys who can just. It's basically him and Quentin Tarantino. I feel like are because even now, like you know, Spielberg's had some duds over commercial duds over the last few years. I
Yeah.
like a lot of his recent movies. You know, Marty's had some commercial duds over the last couple of years. Pretty much just Quentin Tarantino and Christopher Nolan. I feel like the only two guys who they could put out anything, you put their name on it, and it's going to be a hit at this point.
People are going to go see it.
Based on the
Yeah.
director's name, obviously there's IP stuff that is.
Yeah. Yeah. I was thinking like maybe James Gunn, but like people are more so
Yeah, like he's never. I
tied
mean,
to
he's
the
been
IP
in the.
than
Yeah, he's just been in the
he's
Marvel
been in the
TV.
IP game. Yeah. So that's Nolan. I will try to not say too much else about my thoughts about Nolan because he is a very skilled director. He's just not totally for me.
I
That
think
being
we
said,
I think I like we have the same criticisms of him, right? Like his characters
mhm,
are mostly bland. He tends to kind of put himself in the movie. He has crutches that, you know, the time we'll obviously talk about the way time
yeah,
works in this movie. That's a crutch. That's definitely a crutch for him that he like.
yeah.
I mean, the fact like it's kind of it ends up working well in this movie. It's kind of unnecessary in this one. Um,
So it's okay. Maybe we might have different criticisms. I think I mostly agree with the character thing. I think when he tries to do character stories, they're not that interesting. Like Interstellar, like
Yeah.
to me is like not like a touching.
Yeah,
Uh,
Interstellar is really cool when they're in space or, like, on the water planet. I
yeah,
don't think, like,
but
this
then
is
when
a
McConaughey goes, I
podcast.
think
Yeah, yeah.
Interstellar is probably in the canon. But
It's
then
gotta
like when
be. Yeah.
when he goes into the back into the ship and he's like crying at the videos of his kids, I'm like, doesn't do it for me.
Uh-huh.
Um, but okay, let's let's dial back to Dunkirk.
Okay.
Um, so the I think the main reason why I think that this is Christopher Nolan's best movie, or why this movie works for me so much more than some of his other movies, is because I think it strips his filmmaking style down to like what he's best at
Mhm.
and removes everything that I think he is shitty at. Um, so like
There's no
being
characters,
someone,
but that's fine.
yeah, which is great because like he sucks at writing characters. I think he sucks at tackling like big themes or like societal elements or whatever. Like I don't think that he's that great at that stuff, which is totally fine. I don't need every filmmaker to do that.
Mhm.
I think Christopher Nolan is really good at staging action set pieces, which that's a lot of what this movie is. It's a lot of beautiful staging of warfare, and like not depicting it in like a glorious manner whatsoever, but like being really effective in how it's staged and portrayed and shown to us. And I think his obsession with how it is that we experience time is really, really, really interesting.
Mhm.
And I think some of his movies do it better than others. I think that this movie, because it's not explicitly about like it's not like a high concept sci-fi the same
There's
way
no
that
time
like
travel in this one. Yeah.
it's not Tenet or Inception or Interstellar,
Interstellar, yeah,
where
exactly.
those are really high concept sci-fi movies exploring how it is that we experience time.
Memento.
This
I
is
mean, it
all,
starts with Memento, right? Like,
yeah,
showing
Memento
time stuff from the very start.
from the jump. But this one is just about how how we experience time, how we experience the same events, but over different periods of time, and like using the tools of mostly just editing. Like this movie is an absolute marvel in terms of how to like edit a movie, in terms of like understanding like narrative rhythms, um cross-cutting between
Mhm.
different stories and scenarios and stuff. Like I think those are the two best things that Christopher Nolan does as a filmmaker, and this movie is highlighting both of those things and throwing everything else out the window. So I'm like, hell yeah, give
Yeah.
me Dunkirk every day of the week.
Yeah, the whole movie is a set. Another movie that came out around this time. I feel like there was actually a lot of movies around this time that kind of had the same. This was definitely a pace we kind of like got into. Like I think of
Hmm.
Mad Max Fury Road maybe came out the year before this.
Hmm.
I think Last Jedi, even like Infinity War, where it's kind of just like one big action set piece cross cutting for the essentially like the length of the movie, right? Like Fury Road is a chase one direction, a chase back in the other direction.
Yeah.
This movie is the, I mean, the very first scene of the movie is they're running away from German soldiers, and it doesn't stop essentially the whole way. This movie's like an hour 45 minutes long, which I think every other Christopher Nolan movie. I don't know. I've never seen um, Following or Insomnia, but I think every other Christopher Nolan movie is at least 2 hours long. Uh,
Hmm.
yeah, there's just no fat on this movie. It starts at 100 miles per hour or close to it and stays there pretty much until the very last scene of the movie.
It's amazing. Yeah, the idea that it just starts with them running away from German soldiers. Um, the I was thinking it would have been really funny if a bit that they went to throughout the entire movie was just him trying to take a poop but never being able to.
Yeah,
It happens like twice in the beginning, and I was
yeah,
like, this would
very
be a
beginning.
really funny joke.
Yeah.
Also, what do you think about, since we're talking about Germans, and I'm just like hopping all over the place right now. What do you think about the fact that there are like we never see the Germans really, even though they are like the impending threat throughout the entire film?
Yeah, it's obviously yeah, I guess you get some gunshots from Germans here and there, right? Like at the very beginning, the group, a bunch of them get killed by Germans. They're shooting at whatever the thing, like tank thing that they're in. And I guess
Hmm.
there's some planes, but yeah, I mean, I think again, we're not the probably the right people to talk about the Britishness of this movie, but it places the entire emphasis on, in the end, it's not really a movie about fighting a war. It's a movie about like saving people essentially.
Mhm.
And um, that's kind of, it just puts the entire there's no villain in this movie, right? There's other than like Hitler, who you never see.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean it's like very interesting for an it's very interesting structure for an action movie, um, or a war movie or whatever. I guess or war movies sometimes don't have like a explicit villain like that, but um, yeah, I mean it definitely like places the emphasis on the Britishness of it. I feel like, and the like collective spirit that obviously I think kind of like the ultimate theme of this movie is like, I
Ye
was kind of I remember seeing it in theaters, the the stuff with Fionn Whitehead, I think is the actor's name. I don't know his character's name. Like
Mhm. Is that the
the
main guy?
yeah, like that felt like the main story watching it on the big screen, and then actually watching it last night on at home. The stuff with like Barry Keoghan and Mark Rylance feels like kind of the real heart of the movie.
Yeah. There's just enough character and, like, emotional, groundedness within that story to, like, keep people, like, locked in, so it doesn't
Mhm.
just feel like a weird, like, abstract, story about people trying to outrun the Germans,
Who you never
which
see again.
what's up?
Who
Yeah,
you
we
never
never
see. Yeah.
yeah. Um, yes, okay, what do you think about the 3 different parts? Is there one part that you enjoy more than the others, or how do you feel like the 3 of them sort of, like, work, as they're being, like, interplayed with each other?
Yeah, I think an interesting thing about Christopher Nolan movies is that, and they work to varying degrees, is that they're half of the movies are like within one movie, half the time they're these huge action set pieces, right? And that is all the stuff of the boat sinking and all the stuff going on land. And obviously there's action up in up in the sky as well, and on the boat to at certain points. But I again, when I saw this movie in theaters, like what you come out of is you feel like you can't breathe, basically, right? For
Yeah.
an hour and a half, just watching Harry Styles try not to drown,
Yeah.
essentially. There's a lot of near drownings in this movie, and a couple, there are drownings, obviously.
Yeah.
Um, uh, but watching it on TV, and you know, watching it at home, I thought actually the stuff on the boat, I thought was kind of the strongest stuff in the movie, even if the Bear King. I mean, you obviously having seen it already, you know that it's pretty like tragic, but
Yeah.
um, I think again, my biggest takeaway coming out of the movie was that it felt like that was the story Christopher Nolan wanted to tell, was about all the civilians basically coming to the rescue of uh the army. But obviously, I mean the stuff on land is like that's just A plus level um
Yeah.
action filmmaking. And then I guess the sky stuff. I mean, I love Tom Hardy. I love that he wears weird masks all the time.
Yeah.
Um, and that stuff is good too. I mean, they're it's good dog fighting. Like that's hard stuff to shoot. And those are
Mhm.
honestly the best shots of the movie are just I don't know if there were drone shots or whatever of the planes and just over the water. So I think they
Yeah.
all have their strengths, and I felt differently about it this time watching it than I did watching it in theaters. I'd be really interested to watch it in theaters again, and they do a good job re-releasing Nolan movies for like in IMAX,
Mhm.
70 millimeter. Um, this would be, I think, an interesting one to look back on, like if they do a 10-year anniversary for this, like they did for Interstellar last year.
Yeah, this would be a fun one to revisit. I've probably seen this movie, like, 4 or 5 times,
Mhm.
like, I really adore this movie. I think it's a really easy watch, but also, like, a really rich text. I agree that like, it seems like the main thing that he wanted to get at was the heroics of the civilians. Like, rewatching it this time, and there's, like, the blind man at the end who's just, like, handing out blankets and stuff to all of them, and he's just saying, "Good job, lads,"
Yeah.
"Job well done." And Harry Styles is like, "All we did is survive." And the blind man's like, "That's more than enough." And
Yeah.
it's like, damn, that's like when Nolan isn't trying to make a whole movie the about human emotions, like he can sneak in one brief moment every now and then,
Mhm.
and it totally hits.
Yeah, the ending
um,
is I mean, the ending's really strong. I was very I it's interesting to me that this movie I had remembered the movie ending on Tom Hardy,
mhm,
but it actually does cut back to for, like, you know, a handful of frames, it cuts actually back to, um the Fionn Whitehead character, and it actually ends with him just, like, lifting his eyes from the newspaper after he finishes reading the speech, which
yeah,
I don't really know what that means, but it was interesting to me that I remembered the movie ending on this epic Tom Hardy burning his plane and getting ready to sacrifice himself to the Germans, but it actually ends back on a train in England with where the survivors of this.
yeah. Well, I mean, that's probably the point, right? Is that the emphasis should be on the like heroics of just surviving, of like surviving war. Which going back to like this as a war movie, I thought was super interesting in that it's not really about the heroics of like fighting off Germans, literally just like it's just about how much war sucks and like
Yeah.
being in war is shitty. And like these dudes are just like 18, 19-year-old guys who are literally just trying to like fucking survive. And like can't take a poop in peace.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a lot of fighting other than the stuff in the plane, there's, like, no fighting back at all. There's, like at the very beginning, like, the one guy's, like, shooting at the plane, like but it's, like,
Mhm.
totally futile. He's just shooting a one rifle up at a bomber coming over his head, and obviously he can't do anything about that. So, yeah, there's not a lot of fighting back. It's uh, just escaping and surviving.
Yeah. I mean, are you a big war movie guy?
Um, no, I mean, I don't think I've seen a lot of, I've never seen Come and See, for example, which obviously
Okay.
is like kind of
Yeah.
the anti-war war movie.
Yeah.
But I like Saving Private Ryan. I like Band of Brothers. I've seen enough of them. Seen a lot. We
Yeah.
we took a Vietnam. We both took a Vietnam in
Yeah.
film class together. I don't know if we were in the class together, but we both took a Vietnam in film class at Syracuse. So I've seen all those. Um,
Yeah.
but
You
it's not like my go-to genre. Like I'm not like a war movie's out, I gotta go see it.
okay.
I like
Interesting.
Inglorious Bastards, obviously.
Of course.
Yeah,
There's the joke that, like, obviously neither of us are fathers at this point, but
yeah,
when you become a dad, you either have to be a sports dad, a war History Channel dad,
yeah.
or, I think the third option is grilling dad. So so I guess you would fall more into the sports dad.
Sports dad probably, yeah. My dad was not a big, like he wasn't, like, reading World War II books or anything. So
History Channel wasn't
yeah,
on
it wasn't he
repeat
didn't
in the
that was not our household. Like, obviously, again, I've seen a lot of the big ones, but,
Mhm.
um,
I could see you as a sports, World War II hybrid kinda dad.
yeah, I like reading a historical book here and there, or, watching, like, a PBS there was a good Vietnam War documentary, right? Was that
Oh, the Ken
Ken Burns
Burns one.
one? Yeah,
Yeah.
you know?
I was asking because I think again, like because this movie isn't really about, you know, the heroics of British soldiers fighting back against the Germans, but it's also not like this isn't really like an anti-war movie either in the way that
No.
something like Come and See is. It's a really, really, really unique, just like war as survival kind of movie, which I find to be really interesting just because there are so many war movies and so many of them like end up being like kind of the same thing. We like retread like the same
Mhm.
ideas over and over again. Um, which is another reason why I think that this is Christopher Nolan's best, is because in my eyes, he falls into really conventional filmmaking a lot of the time. And this is so unconventional for so many different reasons. Um, and it's like super hard to pull off. Like the fact that people were seeing this in waves and droves or whatever to just like watch British dudes not get killed. Um, like that's kind of amazing. Like this really shouldn't have been the success that it was, but he was able to pull it off.
Yeah, it feels like this was like kind of at this point it was like anything Christopher Nolan does is going to be a big hit. Like it felt like, if this was just by if it's someone who was not Christopher Nolan directed
Mhm.
this exact same movie, I don't know if it would have drawn in the same way, but by this point he had so much goodwill built up. I mean, his run before this is the three Dark Knight movies, Interstellar, or the three Dark Knight movies, and then Interstellar, and then he had like Inception and The Prestige were like mixed in. I think he alternated Batman movies with those.
Yeah.
So, those are all big hits and varying degrees of critically acclaimed, and obviously, kind of like rewatchable movies. Like they have definitely like there are people with posters of all those movies in their dorm room, basically, right?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, this was and it felt in some ways it kind of felt like probably the movie he always wanted to make, and by this point he had like built up the goodwill to make it. And
Mhm.
it's interesting that because a lot of those movies are there, he always puts a twist on the genre, right? It's like a twist on the superhero movie, a twist on the sci-fi movie with Interstellar, like coming up with some new concept. But they kind of the themes always tend to be pretty, like you said, traditional, and the structures are typically pretty traditional. Um, and this could have just been a twist on a war movie, but it ends up kind of be and it is in some sense, but it
Mhm.
almost becomes like not a war movie at all because again, there's not a lot of fighting in this movie other than the dogfights going on.
Yeah. So you're talking about how the scenes on land probably have some of the best action. Like there's that scene where they're all on the beach and the Germans are just like dropping bombs.
Yeah, like the
And
very
there's that
beginning,
one
right?
shot of of our main dude like covering his ears, which often gets I feel like circulated on the internet because
Mhm.
apparently Tarantino said that that's the best single shot in any war movie of all time.
Well, should we're both big Tarantino guys, as most men our age are. He
Yeah,
loves this movie. I don't know if like you came across that in your research. Like it's like one of his favorite movies of the century. And
that's
I think that's
amazing.
kind of interesting because it's not, he had certainly like kind of likes exploitation-y kind of movies. Like that is
Mhm,
his whole deal. And this one is like not really exploitative at all. Like obviously there's some like gruesome deaths, uh,
mhm.
but it does not feel like it does not feel like this does not feel of a piece with Inglorious Bastards, which is obviously Quentin Tarantino's twist on the war movie. Uh,
Yeah.
it's very different, and I think Quentin Tarantino. He doesn't strike me as a guy who would like love all of Christopher Nolan's movies necessarily, but I
No.
think he just appreciates the film. As you mentioned at the top, might be the best filmmaking he's ever done, at least in terms of like staging action scenes and
Mhm,
working with math. Obviously there's some great action scenes in Dark Knight, in Inception, but those are all small scale stuff, right? They're like the hallway fight in Inception. It's two guys
mhm.
fighting in a hallway that's spinning around. This one, he's got thousands of extras out there, and it feels the scale feels you feel it the whole time. It feels like he had
Yeah.
to sink a boat. Like, I don't know how he did some of those, like, the first boat that sinks and they're, like, hanging on the side of it, like, I don't
Yeah.
understand how he did all that.
It feels like half of the UK was in this movie.
Yeah.
You've got all the little boats that are coming to save everyone, you know, that's the amount of extras, like, I will say, I think that's one of the big draws for Nolan or that people have to Nolan too is, like, his commitment to practical effects and things of that sort, and, like, for a movie like this, totally comes through, like, the fact that he has thousands of extras on this beach and, you know, however who knows how many takes it took for them to create certain shots or certain moments within this movie, like, the boat sinking boats, uh, you know, in the middle of the English Channel, like all of that definitely comes across within this movie. I think more so than some of his other flicks. So that might be another reason
Yeah.
why people are drawn to it. It is interesting that Tarantino likes this. I can't um maybe because it's a non-linear story, but then so are so many other Christopher Nolan movies.
Yeah,
So
exactly. I'm like, I just found here's the article from the playlist from 2019. Quentin Tarantino says Christopher Nolan's Dunkirk is his number two film of the decade. So
nice. What was number one?
I'm trying to find that if that's in this article.
um, while you're searching for that, the back to the non-linear aspect. And again, sorry for jumping all around in this episode, but I guess it's kind of fitting with the movie that we're talking about. The I don't know that it's necessarily true. Um, maybe not like exactly, but in terms of like the way that this movie is edited and cut together across the three different scenes, and right, so like the um the scenes on land that takes place over the course of a week,
Hmm.
the scenes in the boat takes place over the course of a day,
Yeah.
the scenes in the air take place over the course of an hour, and there is a bit of like the amount of time that we spend with each um location as we're cutting between the scenes and like progressing along in the story, it feels um like it's all like ratioed out. Like it feels like we're spending a significant amount of
Yeah.
time with the dudes on land, and then whatever 1/7 of that with the the dudes on the boat, and then a fraction of that
Yeah.
with Tom Hardy in the air. I obviously I doubt that it's like actually, it actually matches up that way, but um in terms of like a filmmaking technique and like getting us as audience members to understand like the difference in the stakes even that
Yeah.
all three of those stories are experiencing is like so smart and so well executed. So I'm curious
Yeah. The
what you thought
stuff
about
on
all
land,
that.
like, and it goes back to I think the scale of a lot of the uh filmmaking there too, right? Like the stuff on land is a 7-day just like monster undertaking of like trying to figure out how to get what is it 300,000 soldiers I think
Hmm.
they try to get out, or I don't
Yeah.
know if that's the number they end up actually getting out, but in the hundreds of thousands. um like and you it takes a week to do something like that, right? I'll say it's never kind of that's the one thing rewatching. I'm like, it doesn't feel like this took a week, just like based on the way it's shot. Like,
Yeah.
it
Kind of
still
feels like a
feels like
day.
it's all day. Yeah,
Yeah.
that maybe two. Um, but you get the scale. Like, it matches up with the scale of each. I think.
Hmm.
On the boat, we only see one boat, but then at the end, obviously, you see a whole bunch of boats of like are doing the same thing. And then up in the sky, it's like kind of lonely up in one guy in a plane. It's three of them, but obviously they're all isolated in their own planes. And it also feels like on the ground, it's a huge coordinated effort. In the water, it's
Hmm.
like, all right, we've got our one mission, we got to go do this. And then up in the plane, it's like Tom Hardy basically being like, flying by the seat of his pants, quite literally,
Yeah.
and being like improvising and being like, I've got an hour to like try to do something to help this mission out.
Yeah. That's a great point. I hadn't thought about that. I only ever thought about it in terms of like how we are experiencing the time, but in terms of like even the amount of characters
Yeah.
that
Yeah. There's
are
like no one. I mean, in the sky, you get three guys on the boat.
yeah,
I guess we only get three or four on the boat.
yeah,
But then on land, I mean, again, as we said, thousands and
yeah.
thousands of extras out there and
But even in terms of just like
people you actually
characters who were
know. Yeah.
actually
Yeah.
who we know, it's like probably like I don't know, like
Five or
5 or
six, maybe.
7. Yeah.
You got Harry
Um,
Styles,
you
being
have Kenneth
my
Branagh,
Branagh. And then yeah, just a couple other like
the
his
French guy.
assistant, right? Yeah, the French kid. Uh,
Yeah.
Kenneth Branagh's like number two. So there's definitely more characters down on the land.
Yeah. And then it's like, yeah, like 4 on the boat. Nice little Cillian Murphy.
Yeah, I
not
kind of
cameo,
I was
but
trying to remember, like, because obviously Cillian Murphy now is, like, one of the biggest stars in the world, like, one of the
mhm,
best actor. In 2017, I guess, Peaky Blinders has was on at that time, and obviously he'd been the scare like, he was kind of a staple of Christopher Nolan movies by that point.
yeah, he was
He's in
Nolan's guy,
Yeah, he's in all 3 Batman obviously, the main villain in the first Batman movie and pops up again in the other 2. Um,
and he's in Inception.
and he's in Inception, yeah. Um,
Yeah,
but he was definitely not the level of star he is now.
no,
I don't really remember how I felt seeing Cillian Murphy. It was probably back then be like, "Oh, that guy from all these movies."
yeah, yeah, yeah. Today it would have been like, whoa,
Yeah.
Oppenheimer's here.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That's kinda how it felt to have Tom Hardy up in the plane. Like, he
Right.
was like
Yeah,
a
yeah.
big
He was a big
star in 20
star.
yeah, at this point. Because post Inception, everyone was like, that dude,
And Mad
he's"
I guess Mad Max, I think, was the year before. Obviously,
Mhm.
not a Nolan movie, but yeah. I mean, he's Bane.
Yeah. Yeah, so really after Inception, where we were all like, "This guy is gonna be the next movie star," and then he was like, "What if I hide my face and do silly accents for the
Yeah.
next 5 to 10 years?"
Yeah, but he ripped off a bunch. Those were a bunch of hits in a row after that.
Yeah, Mad Max,
Even Venom,
this
not that, like, those movies are great, but
yeah. Yeah, those
they're
movies
very
are great.
popular.
Yeah,
They're very good to watch on airplanes.
good airplane movies. This is a bad airplane
It's a
movie.
bad airplane movie.
Yeah. But Christopher Nolan does make pretty good airplane movies, I would
Yeah, he
say.
does. I mean, they're obviously huge in scale. Like, that's again, I think one thing that's good about him is movies work in a lot of different formats.
Mhm. Yeah. My sorry for jumping all over the place. My
No,
hot take about Oppenheimer is that it reads better um, on the TV than on a big screen.
yeah, I actually I kind of agree. I like the I love the last hour of that movie when like the bomb's gone off and like all the consequences of it. So,
Yeah. Great TNT movie. That movie is going to
oh
crush
yeah,
on TNT Sunday afternoons in yeah, honestly, like, this month, like, April, March, where there's no, like, football or anything,
yeah,
throw Oppenheimer on for 4.5 hours on TNT. I'll take a quick nap, and I'll wake up, and there will be more Oppenheimer on. Amazing.
pretty good.
Um, did you figure out or get to the point in that
Uh,
article
I
for what
believe
Quentin Tarantino's favorite
uh,
movie of the decade
from
was?
what I could gather, it's The Social Network, which
Okay.
obviously he loves Fincher. Like they're I mean they're making the Once Upon a Time in Hollywood like sequel together.
Yeah.
You know,
Um, very weird, everything that's going on there, but
I'm kind of into it. This isn't a Once Upon a Time in Hollywood podcast. I know we have we both diverging opinions on that movie, but I'm into it.
It could be cool. It's just interesting that that's happening.
Yeah.
There will be no Dunkirk 2, unfortunately. There will be no Dunkirk sequel. I guess you could just do another movie where it's just like 3 different perspectives, 3 different people, or 3 different stories,
Yeah.
but
It
I
is
don't know
interesting.
that
He does not go to I mean, he did the 3 Batman movies, but he does not go to the
Mhm.
sequel well, ever.
No, no, like, he could have easily like, I'm sure,
Interstellar
Warner Brothers
2
was
would have
like,
been a
"Yeah,
yeah,
they'll probably give us Inception 2, please."
Inception 2, yeah.
Yeah, that will make a gazillion dollars.
Oppenheimer 2.
Yeah. 2 Op, 2 Heimer. Um, okay, trying to get back to everything that's going on here. Was there anything else that you thought was, like, that you found to be, like, particularly interesting this rewatch that we haven't brought up yet?
Looking through my notes. On the same lines as Cillian Murphy, Barry Keoghan just popping up again was not. I mean, this might have been the first thing I ever saw him in.
Yeah, I think it was,
He's
like, the first big
obviously
thing that he was
become
in.
a he's obviously become a huge star since then. He honestly he gets less to do than I kind of remembered. Because I forgot how quickly he's gets killed essentially.
Ye
Um, so obviously he's got some very dramatic scenes before then. So yeah, good to see him show up. Um, I guess I don't have a lot of Mark Rylance familiarity. I've not seen a lot of movies with him in it. He's
Mhm.
really good in this movie.
Yeah, he's great in this. People love him.
Yeah,
I think he obviously kills it across the pond.
yeah,
Um,
he's so British.
Super British. This movie is so British. Like, I forgot how British this movie is. Um, but yeah, he's great in it.
Yeah, that is in my notes, by the way. This movie is so British.
Yeah. I mean, you brought it up before, like, we're so used to seeing World War II movies from an American perspective that it was, like, a little jarring to be watching this and think about, like, the lack of US, just, like, we're not in this at all.
There's not even American actors, right?
No. What do you think about Nolan and his, like I think he's born in the UK, but he was mostly raised in the States, and that's why a lot of his movies feel like sort of like half in, half out in terms of like, are they British? Are they American? What's the deal here?
Yeah. He always I feel like I was pretty surprised when I found out that he was British, whenever that
Mhm,
was. Because his movies do feel very I mean, all of his movies are set in America otherwise, right? Or like Gotham is America, right? Like
mhm,
but everything else is feels like very distinctly he's always dealing with like kind of I guess Inception's kind of like the international spy story, right? So it's got um you know like Tom Hardy and they're not playing American characters if I remember correctly.
mhm.
Obviously he loves Michael Caine. Um
Yeah. I think Inception was where I found it out because I was like, "Why like, this Leo character, why is his dad British?
British, yeah.
But
Yeah,
he's
that's true.
American?"
And everyone says like the Leo like Christopher Nolan always styles his leading man characters basically like to look like Christopher Nolan.
Yeah.
Inception feels like that's like him. Like that's what he likes to think that he is.
Yeah. He's like, I he looks in the mirror and he sees Leonardo
Yeah.
DiCaprio.
So, but yeah, I mean, I feel like it's very interesting that this movie, even though he's British, kind of stands out as a very British movie.
Mhm,
Where I guess the Prestige is also that's in like Victorian London or something, right? So,
mhm, yeah,
um, but for his run before this, it's all pretty much very American. It's comic book stories. It is, um, a movie in space, but they're in like Nebraska or something, right at the beginning of
yeah,
Interstellar. So they feel like they're Hollywood movies, right? He's making Hollywood movies, and this is
mhm,
obviously a Hollywood movie, but comes with a very British perspective. So, um, yeah, I don't know, that kind of trailed off. I'm out of thoughts there, but it's this one feels like again going back to like what I said earlier. This felt like the movie he always wanted to make.
mhm,
Um, I think there is even stuff about how he wanted to make it earlier in his career, but he wanted to make sure he could had the experience to pull off some of the big, large scale action stuff.
yeah,
So, yeah, I mean, it's interesting to see him kind of go to this well as a guy who is, you know, kind of like a goes like not lowest common denominator, but makes Hollywood movies, big Hollywood movies that are going to be really popular. And this one doesn't really fit the bill in the same way that a lot of his other movies do.
no, which is again, it's cool that this movie came out in his career when it did, because if this was like his 3rd or 4th movie before he had become Christopher Nolan, you know, like you were saying, or if this was just like some random director, then people probably would not have shown up to the theaters in the same way,
Hmm.
for like a weird gimmicky war movie that isn't really about war and doesn't have any characters and like does have some big name stars, but they're like only in it for a couple of minutes at a time.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, I mean, Harry Styles being in this, that's like it was kind of like a weird stunt casting at the time, and it was kind of the start of a Harry Styles actor run that did not really pan out, I think, the way anyone thought it was going to. But
no, because he's great in this.
yeah, and that was definitely like a draw. Like I remember that was like one of the big stories going to the movie. It's like, oh, Harry
Mhm.
Styles is in this gritty war movie.
Yeah, he's like, I'm just gonna say it. He's gorgeous in this movie. That dude should not be in
I gotta say
war.
their hair, all everyone's hair in this movie looks too good for people
Yeah.
who are, running away from the Germans through Paris or wherever they are in France.
Yeah, they all had just enough time
Yeah.
to perfectly coif their hair, and that was it. No time to poop, but they had time to fix their hair. Um, yeah, that being one of the draws was very interesting. I forgot what I was gonna ask before. Oh, were you familiar with the story of Dunkirk and this whole, like, um, evacuation plan?
I don't
Or
think
because
so.
it's so British, like, did we never learn about this in school?
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't definitely didn't learn about it in school. I don't know if I can't think of another movie that hit on it, and I maybe like a World War II documentary at some point touched on it,
Mhm,
but I mean, like in the grand scheme of the war, it wasn't a big deal, right? Like, but in the
mhm.
scheme of they kept 300,000 people alive. That the what at the beginning of the movie they said what they're hoping they're going to bring 30,000 back. So
Yeah,
it didn't beat Hitler running away from the Germans, but it
yeah,
it like was huge, obviously a huge to British culture and to just like the people who were there, and that's what this movie I think gets at, especially at the end. I mean, it's the lines at the end with the blind
mhm.
guy. Um, it's there's more important things than when you're at war. At least there's more important things than beating Hitler. It's the most important thing is getting back home, basically.
Yeah. That I mean, thinking about it, like, a little bit more, right? So for us as
Micro
Americans.
story, I guess, as opposed to like a macro
Yeah,
World War II
but
story.
the macro of the story from, like, the perspective that they're telling it, it does make sense where they're like, "Look, like, France is gone. Like, we've lost France,
Yeah,
we've
we're
lost Belgium, like, they're cooked. Like, we need to get home because Hitler is gonna come to us at some point,
we gotta be
and we
ready.
need to be able to, like, protect our homeland." Like, they were literally just thinking about survival, but, like, for us as Americans, again, the war in Europe didn't start until D-Day.
Right. And there was
Like,
never a really I mean, other than Pearl Harbor, obviously, there was never a real threat of the United States getting invaded.
yeah,
Like,
it
it's
wasn't like.
different. It was very different. I mean, I remember this is kind of a tangent, but I remember when COVID happened and I was, like, looking you would see all these stories about, like, the last time that, like, the NCAA tournament didn't happen or the last
Mhm.
time and I remember I was looking through, like, the Premier League Wikipedia page, and they just, like, didn't have seasons for, like, 5 straight years in
Dicks, they
sporting
were
because
all.
the war was, like, happening there.
Yeah.
So I think as Americans,
You
obviously,
can't have
we're like
Chelsea versus Nottingham Forest when, like, the blitz is going
yeah,
on.
and, like, obviously in the US, like, a lot of athletes went over so but they still kept playing the games. I
Yeah.
think it's different, it's pretty interesting to, like, how different I think our 2 cultures' perspectives are on World War II. I think it explains a lot about where we are as a country, in
Yeah.
2025, frankly. But, yeah, it's again, it's like a you do get, obviously, like and, Holocaust movies, which are kind of a subset of World War II movies, give you
Mhm.
kinda like the more personal stakes, obviously. Um,
Mhm.
but and even, like, Saving Private Ryan is ultimately about trying to rescue one kid, um,
Yeah.
but American war movies just do not have the same level of stakes, I don't think, at as or the stakes are different than they are in a
Yeah.
British World War II movie.
The threat was never as immediate.
Yeah.
It was never like, right, like, he's like, they're like, "We have to get home because France is cooked, and the next thing that Hitler's gonna do is he's going to try to invade Britain, and we need to, like, protect ourselves." And the thought was never like, he's going to do that, and then he's gonna, hop across the Atlantic
Right.
and invade New York or
Yeah.
something, or, like, march through DC.
Yeah.
Um, so, like, because of that, like, physical disconnect, we as Americans, like, don't fully, even to this day, I don't think fully grasp, like, what the threat level was in the immediate for, France, England, um, like, Eastern European countries at this time, where it
Yeah, I
was
mean,
like.
you see it over there right now with, like, the war in Ukraine. Like, there's a
Mhm.
lot more urgency from the European Union to make sure that war ends in a way that they want than there is for the United States.
Yeah. Yeah. What are you gonna do? Hop on a bird and
Yeah,
come over here? Yeah.
yeah.
But you're gonna hop on an 8-hour flight and come invade Philadelphia. Uh, but again, I think also that aspect of it and the movie being so British in terms of like what the stakes were for this evacuation plan. Like I think that also is another reason to like marvel at how this movie ends up becoming a success,
Mhm.
especially in the States, because like there is no connection point for us as American audiences to like again, most of us probably didn't know that much about Dunkirk or what was happening with this evacuation plan. And still we were like Christopher Nolan movie, fuck yeah, I'm in. Let's go to the theaters. Let's see this bad boy on the big screen. Um but otherwise like this is a story that like we have no interest in.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty incredible. And yeah, back to what we like, it's a testament to how popular Christopher Nolan is and how much he resonates with Americans and even this very not American story could be. It's about a retreat. That's like the least American thing you could have, right? Like
Yeah.
theoretically, like at least the way we like to act when we go into wars, we're like, never surrender kind of thing. Um,
Yeah.
but I think obviously it's not as big a hit. Honestly, on the Nolan scale, it's probably one of his lesser hits. I would
Mhm.
think certainly, other than Tenet, which came out during COVID. I have to imagine this was his least successful movie probably since
Mhm.
Prestige,
The
maybe.
post. Yeah.
But it was still obviously a huge hit, and I think it's in the canon. Like, it's clearly has we're what uh 8 years on from this, and I think it's a lot of people's maybe not their favorite Christopher Nolan movie, but I think for a lot of people, it's kind of like the trendy, like non-huge, non you know Batman, non Interstellar, like
Yeah.
it's like a trendy pick, I think, especially among people who are like really into movies.
I would have guessed The Prestige. I think
I like the Prestige.
that's like the Tottenham Hotspur pick
The
for,
Prestige, yeah, and Memento. Those two movies feel so of the like late '90s, early 2000s, like twist
yeah.
movies. And I think they're both really good. I actually think
Memento's like
I think Memento, yeah,
The Everton pick.
I think Memento. I'm kind of anytime I watch a movie, I'm shocked how well it holds up.
Yeah, that movie I haven't watched that movie in years. I think that's also in the canon. The Prestige is also in the canon. I
But yeah,
think Interstellar is.
the fact that Dunkirk's like in other than the weird time manipulation, it's a straightforward, straight ahead. It's one of his few movies that's like set in the real world, basically, right? It's essentially just this and Oppenheimer. Because even like the Prestige, like they're cloning people. Um, Memento is so stylized that really this and Oppenheimer are the only like kind of grounded movies I feel like that he's made.
It is in a weird way, like, kind of accessible, even though, um, the word that I always go back to is, like, conventional.
Yeah,
Like, I think something like Oppenheimer, it presents itself as being, like, this really bold, unconventional, like, way of making a movie, but ultimately like falls into a lot of really easy conventional traps where I think that this movie is like way more bold in what it is trying to accomplish and like able to accomplish as a feat of filmmaking.
yeah.
Um
I think the two movies of his that have fared the best at the Oscars are this and Oppenheimer, which I think speaks to kind of how accept like they're movies like my mom would see, right? Like she doesn't care
yeah,
about like Interstellar, right? Like, but
because they're not really like genre movies.
yeah, I mean, unless a war movie you count as a genre movie, which kind of is, but those are some of the most, they're just some of the most traditional
Yeah.
like award kind of type movies we have. So yeah, they're kind of his two only non-genre movies. Because again, like even Memento, which is ostensibly in the real world, is like a super noir with obviously
Yeah.
an extremely strange storytelling device that is not very accessible. But Um,
The last
everything
thing I'll say on this, and Nolan in general, sort of speaking to, like, how conventional he is as a filmmaker, and also some of the I don't wanna say no, it's a crutch. Um, a lot of times his movies are carried by the scores, and Hans Zimmer is doing a lot of heavy lifting in this movie. Great score. I don't think it's doing as much heavy lifting as, like, Ludwig's score is in Oppenheimer, but this score is banging and doing a lot of work.
It is. Obviously, you got the ticking, which that's the one thing that's the one way I think this movie definitely holds up better on. I mean, there's a lot of ways it obviously holds up better on a big screen, but watching it at home, I feel like I did not get the same. I just remember in the movie theater, you could hear that ticking the whole
Yeah,
time, and I felt like I didn't get that on, like, whatever my sound system is at home in
yeah.
the same way.
The sound bars aren't doing, even if you have,
Yeah,
like, the little,
exactly.
surround sound,
Yeah.
it's not it's not doing the same work.
But yeah,
Um
I mean, uh, this Oppenheimer, which I think that's actually the best score he's had in one of his movies. I
mhm.
think everything else has been Hans Zimmer, at least since he, like, got really popular. And then Inception obviously has the very clever device of, like, slowing down the, one song and turning that into the score. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, they're all the scores are as much a gimmick kind of as a lot of the other stuff that he's doing. And obviously, he gets credit for like that vision too. I have to assume he's very collaborative with Hans Zimmer in
Yeah.
at least obviously he's not composing the scores, but he's like, this is what I want to have. Like the ticking is so essential that it's hard to believe that
Mhm.
Hans Zimmer just came at that without any collaboration with
Yeah, which
Nolan.
makes me calling it a crutch feel a bit mean because, like you said, he probably is pretty involved in, like, in the score and, like, and scoring the movie in terms of, like, what it is that he wants and how he wants it to, like, fit into his,
Yeah,
like, larger
I think he's a
artistic vision.
really good editor. Or I don't know if he edits his movies, but his movies are always really well edited and great editing. I mean, I'm not an expert in it to any degree about editing, but a big part of editing is making the score match, especially in his movies, is making the score match up with what you're seeing on the screen. Uh,
Yeah, it
and
all comes
all of his
together
movies, yeah, all of his
together.
movies do that really well.
Yeah. Poor Hans Zimmer, though. I think Nolan has officially dumped him. I think for his next movie, he's going back
Is
to
he?
Ludwig.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Hans Zimmer's got the Dune movies going now, right? So he's
Yeah.
I mean, he's
He's
doing
set.
fine, but
Yeah.
he should have won for the first Dune. I don't think he did.
No, he did not. But yeah, amazing score. It would have been silly for us
Not
to end
mentioned.
this conversation and not mention uh the Hans Zimmer score. I don't
Oh,
know
he
if this
did
is a
win for
very
Dune. He did win for Dune. Okay.
okay, thank
For Hans
God.
Zimmer.
But he didn't win for any of the other Nolan movies,
No.
right? Did he? He didn't win for
It's the
this.
only other Oscar. I had no idea he won the Oscar for this. The Lion King.
Oh, nice. Okay, good
This
for
is the score in The Lion King.
hell yeah.
Had no idea.
Uh, well, Dave, unless you have anything else, I think we can get to some recommendations, which might include other movies that were scored by the one and only Hans Zimmer. Um, but do you have any other notes for us on Dunkirk before we wrap up?
No, I think we can move on to recommendations, and I can kind of make my first one that maybe will let us kind of bridge the conversation a little bit and get maybe some of our last thoughts out.
Nice. All right. Well, I think we can jump in.
All
What
right.
is your first recommendation?
My first one is an experience, and that is going to a 70 millimeter IMAX movie theater. We have one of the few. I live in Miami. There's not a lot in the United States that play that format. I'm sure you have one in New York. Uh,
Hmm.
we have one. The Fort Lauderdale Science Museum
Hell
has
yeah.
literally like a 7-story IMAX screen. I've only seen 2 movies on it. Both are Christopher Nolan movies. He's one of the few who puts his movies in that format. I saw Interstellar for the first time. For they were doing a 10th anniversary re-release of it, and I saw Oppenheimer in it. If you live again, there's not a lot of screens in the United States that play that format. But like, go see movies like that because they're like, it's mind blowing how big the
Yeah.
images are. Um, actually, I just saw that Sinners, the new Ryan Coogler movie, is
Yeah,
in 70 millimeter IMAX. So I'm pretty pumped. I saw they're playing that at the Fort Lauderdale Science Museum. Got to get my tickets to go see that in a few weeks. Um, and
this
then
week. That's coming out
I think that next weekend, right?
this weekend, yeah.
So yeah, that's my first recommendation is go see, and especially Christopher Nolan, as I said, is one of the few who does it. I think films
Mhm.
all of his movies in that format. And going back to how I think you appreciate different things in different ways that you see his movies, anyone's movies, but definitely his movies. Like I remember the first time seeing Oppenheimer in a normal movie theater, I loved the last act. When I saw it on the huge screen, hard not to be blown away by the bomb exploding. Um, and I would guess Dunkirk would be similar. I felt the same way that when I watched it in theaters, the stuff on land felt the most. That was the biggest takeaway. And this time watching it at home, the smaller moments like the stuff on the boat, I felt like stand out more. So uh, it's definitely different seeing a movie in that format.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that recommendation. I think Oppenheimer might be the only movie I've seen in actually, no, I saw Dune 2 in 70 millimeter
Oh,
IMAX,
really?
and that absolutely melted my face.
Yeah.
That was incredible. So
I
yeah,
think
we have one in New
screen in the
York.
city. Yeah.
The, the Lincoln Center IMAX screen, I think, is the biggest IMAX screen in North America.
Really?
And yeah, I was talking to a buddy the other day about when we heard that Sinners is being played in 70 millimeter IMAX there. We were like, we should probably see it there because apparently that movie totally rips, totally kicks ass. Um, yeah, there was. I also came across something earlier today on like Instagram, like one of those like little infographics that was like all of the 70 millimeter
Yeah, I
IMAX
saw that.
screens in the world, and it's like there's one in like Indiana,
Yeah, a couple in
super random.
LA, obviously.
Two in LA, one in San Francisco, the one in Fort Lauderdale. Um, yeah, the Indiana one really stood out to me. So it was like, wait, I think there's one in Dallas. There must be one in Dallas.
Uh-huh.
So
Yeah,
yeah, if
you
you
were right.
are,
Lincoln Center screen is the biggest in the United States.
yeah,
75.5 feet tall.
yeah, seeing Killian Murphy's face up there when he learned about everything, all of the fallout from making the bomb, just on the biggest screen imaginable. It was great.
Yeah. I saw
Not as
yeah,
great as seeing it
In
on my couch though.
Interstellar was the other one I saw, and some of those because they do not the whole movie is filmed, I think, in that like, there's sometimes where the whole screen gets filled. Like,
Yeah.
Interstellar, it's, like, all the stuff in space, basically, or the stuff on the water planet, and, like,
Mhm.
all that stuff is, like, pretty mind-blowing. I'm very curious what Sinners is gonna look like in that format because it does not seem like it's gonna be the same scope as these Christopher Nolan
Yeah.
movies we're talking about.
I think that one was shot on 65 millimeter, and I think it was the whole thing. So like Nolan
Yeah. I think
doesn't
Dunkirk
shoot
is
everything on
65 also, based off Wikipedia, so not quite
Dunkirk.
70, but yeah,
Yeah.
Dunkirk, so
Um, but Dune, I don't know if Dune was shot only on 70 millimeter, but or Dune 2 at
yeah,
least, but I think everything was shot on IMAX cameras. So there wasn't that weird like shift in like aspect ratio or
yeah.
whatever throughout. But yeah, great recommendation. Find the one that is nearest to you. If you're anywhere in the Midwest,
Drive to Indiana, I guess.
drive to Indiana. Totally worth it. Awesome. My first recommendation, I'm gonna do another World War II movie that is about British people just trying to survive. That's all that they want to do. They're just trying to get to the end of the day, get to the next day. They want to, you know, not die at the hands of one Adolf Hitler, which is kind of all that any of us are doing
Yeah,
at this point, in time. I don't know if you saw it from last year. Steve McQueen dropped Blitz. It unceremoniously was just like
it was
they
an
just like
Apple, right? They put it on
farted it
Apple.
out onto
Yeah,
Apple TV Plus. Um, it's not the best movie. It's like far from his heights of like 12 Years a Slave and all that, but still a pretty interesting war movie about a lot of what Dunkirk is about, which is just
yeah,
like people just like trying to survive and war really being like the shittiest thing that you can experience. And all you can do in those situations is just like try to just get to the next fucking day.
Yeah. I never saw it, I never watched it, but as we were having our conversations at the beginning, I it was definitely like I didn't feel like I should bring it up because I hadn't seen it, but, it
Mhm.
felt like it was looming over a lot of our conversation in the
Yeah.
first half of the show, talking about the Britishness of this movie and the British perspective on war movies.
Yeah.
And again, kind of a similar thing where Steve McQueen, I think, was able to leverage his success with 12 Years a Slave and I guess Widows was not a big hit, but obviously a guy who was an Academy Award winning director. I think telling kind of like a personal story, going from telling American stories to come in Hollywood to coming
Yeah.
back and getting to tell his British story.
Very British World War II story.
Yeah,
Yeah. Steve McQueen and Christopher Nolan, are they the same guy?
kind of, not really. All right, my next one is another movie about a retreat. From the same year, it's Star Wars: The Last Jedi.
Hell yeah.
Um, a movie that I think is good. It's good.
We're not gonna do Last Jedi, debate. You don't wanna open that whole can of worms that
Um,
has been an internet debate for the last 8
since the day
years.
it came out, yeah.
Yeah.
I
Since before it came out, honestly,
Yeah, for real.
depending on the debate.
I still think there's stuff in that is pretty much as good as anything that's ever been in Star Wars. There's a lot that's not good about that movie, um, but um, it came out the same year. It's about a retreat. There's some really cool action scenes. I really like the lightsaber fight in the throne room. Um, I like I like when they blow up. They crash the ship into the other ship. That's cool.
Yep.
Um,
Shout out Laura Dern.
yeah. Um, I like the planet at the end with the ice, but like when no, it's salt, right? But so like
Mhm.
when they fly over it, it kicks up and it's like red underneath it.
Yeah.
And I think all the stuff between Adam Driver and Daisy Ridley when they have their little like psychic conversations, I think are good. So I think it's a good movie.
I agree. I totally agree. I think it's,
Not
as
in
we
the
get
canon,
further
I
and
guess.
not in the canon, I think as we get further and further away from that trilogy, that movie, separates itself
It's the
from.
only one that I feel that I have like that I remember. I mean, I remember the last one being so bad. Um,
Mhm.
that I remember that. Like I remember when they pretended Chewbacca died. Um, but
Yeah.
The Last Jedi is the only one. Though they don't have to make this a whole Star Wars thing, but the whole problem with that trilogy is that no one was on the same page about what the new trilogy should be.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember Force Awakens when I saw that in theaters. It was great. I really enjoyed it.
Mhm.
Don't really ever feel a need to rewatch it. Like, it feels just like a worse version of the original trilogy. Whereas The Last Jedi felt like something new in a way that like I mean I'm not a big prequels revisionist guy, but I think the reason some people like the prequels is that they're so different than the original trilogy. Last
Mhm.
Jedi I think is good because it's so different from the original trilogy.
Yeah. It's like trying something. It's not just like, "Hey, remember the Millennium Falcon? Isn't that a cool thing?" Yeah. J.J. Abrams is on my list of directors that I wanna fight.
And I honestly have not seen a lot of his movies, but I watched Lost, obviously.
Yeah. But he wasn't even really doing Lost.
No,
He just did, yeah.
did
Too much
he
lens flare. It's like,
did he
get
direct
out
for
of here with all
Cloverfield, or was that his production company?
just his production
Just his
company.
production company.
He's a total fraud.
Yeah, I mean,
He's
I know we're both big Cloverfield guys.
oh, I am the biggest Cloverfield
Yeah.
guy. Yeah. um, we probably, yeah, both loved it because we wanted to be at that party in
Yeah,
the loft in the opening scene. Like,
yeah. I mean, that
um,
was another one, came out when we were in high school. I was really into Lost at the time. There was a
yeah.
lot of internet like, "Is this connected to Lost?" We don't have to make this whole Cloverfield thing, but, um, J.J. Abrams, good producer, bad director.
Yes, that's you did it, and he produced The Last Jedi, so
Yep, there you go.
perfect. I love it. I am going to stick with British war movies. This one is about, I think, World War One. Yes, 100%. It's about World War One. Also, totally centered around a gimmick in terms of how we experience war, experience our time within war. A movie that I like don't actually think is all that good. Like I think a lot of people would say that it is like as good or maybe better than Dunkirk. I don't think that this movie actually holds a candle to Dunkirk, but it feels way too in line to not
Yeah.
recommend it. Plus, it has the same editor, and I think that
Oh,
he
does it?
should have received as much acclaim for the one shot gimmick as Deakins.
Deacons, yeah.
The editor is Lee Smith, and the movie is, of course, 1917.
Yeah. That movie's
I
good.
haven't seen that since theaters. I kind of want to revisit it.
Yeah, I
I
watch
don't think
once
it's
it'll,
that
like,
good.
pop on TNT or something, I'll watch a little bit of it.
Yeah.
It's good. I mean, it was awesome in theater. Like, the gimmick is very gimmicky, um,
Hmm.
and it's another interesting thing about that movie that I think is in line with this one is cast a lot of nobodies, like, a lot of unknowns, which
Hmm.
obviously they're going for some of the same, like, ideas of, like, kind of the nameless, faceless soldier, um, but
And then
yeah, I mean,
Benedict Cumberbatch
yeah,
shows up
Benedict
at one
Cumberbatch
point
is like the general
with
at
a
the beginning or
mustache.
something, right? Or
Yeah.
but yeah, that movie's good. I thought about putting it on my list. Obviously, there's a lot of similarities.
Yeah.
Um, I don't think it's as good as Dunkirk, but it's very solid movie.
Yeah.
All right, my last one. I've got another World War II time travel kind of story. Slaughterhouse 5 by Kurt Vonnegut. Um,
I've not read
a
it.
Oh, you've never read it? Really
Yeah.
good. It's about it's I think somewhat biographical because I believe Kurt Vonnegut was um a soldier in World War II. Um, and it centers on it's like the Dresden fire bombings in Germany. Um, and basically the main it's told from like, first person perspective. He's caught in the bombings and starts to travel through time. Haven't read in a long time. One of my favorites though,
Mhm.
like kind of a dark comedy war time travel book. Not very long. I'd recommend it.
Yeah.
It felt too perfect to have a movie that or a book about World War II that also deals with time manipulation, sort
Yeah.
of. Very different tonality, themes, all that kind of stuff than Dunkirk, but um, uh, a World War II book that has the time is very important too. So
I love it.
Slaughterhouse 5.
I gotta check it out. I feel like I missed so many of the, like, classic novels, and
I
I don't know what I was reading in high school English classes, but, like, I miss a lot of the, like, just, like, bangers that
Yeah, a
everyone
few
else was
years
reading.
ago, I was like, all right, I'm gonna like read some of the ones that like maybe during COVID era, kind of. I was like, all right, I'm
Yeah.
gonna read some of the classics that I missed, and um,
Yeah. I just reread Great Gatsby every other summer.
it was the 100-year anniversary of Great Gatsby the other day.
Oh, wow.
April 10th,
Congrats.
1925 was
Happy
the day it was
birthday,
published. Yeah,
Gatsby.
happy birthday, Gatsby.
Yeah. And Tim. Tim is also April 10th, I think.
Oh, there you go. He's
He's
almost
and
as
he's a
old
big
as Great
Gatsby guy.
Gatsby. Is he?
Yeah. Yeah. Um, my that's a reference that, like, 2 people listening will get.
Yeah, no. And one of them is Tim.
Yeah. My for my last recommendation, I'm gonna recommend a museum.
Oh,
One of my favorite museums that I've ever been to. I'm sticking with the theme of the UK, going very British. We're going World War II stuff. Dave, I don't know if you've been to London
never have.
recently. Whenever you and Sam get out there, you guys have to check out the Imperial War Museum. It's apparently it started off as just a museum about the British Empire's role within World War One, but then as the years went on, it has really just become about like British involvement in wars and conflicts, like in the 20th and into 21st centuries. Super, super, super interesting. Really, really, really like in-depth stuff about I only got through the World War One and World War Two floors of the museum, but just like really, really super informative. And again, like tackling it from a mostly British perspective. So like very different than what we're used to hearing and like learning about the war from an American perspective. Like I was going
Mhm.
through and I was like halfway through the World War II floor. And I was like, when the hell does the US show up? Like,
Yeah.
when do we get to town? What's going on? How can you tell the history of this war without mentioning the good old US of A, brother? Um, so like one of the most interesting museums I've ever been to, if you're a history nut, like and find yourself in London, you have to go there. And if you are like a super history nerd, plan on spending like an entire day there.
I
Like it is really, really, really informative.
I'm
It's
a
good
major
stuff.
museum as someone from Washington, DC, I'm a major museum guy, so, that sounds very cool to me.
Love to hear it. Yeah. I think you would dig it. And they have some like, yeah, ton of like they have like tanks and um like like rocket launchers and stuff from like all different kinds of wars. And it goes all the way up through 21st century stuff. So I don't want to say it's good stuff because like war is like pretty bad, but all very, very, very interesting. So there you have it. Amazing. Great recommendations, great conversation. Dave, thank you again for joining. This has been a blast and a pleasure as always.
Yeah, it was great. I love this movie. I was very glad to have an excuse to rewatch it for the first time in a long time. And I assume we'll find another good one to talk about sometime soon.
Yeah, if I don't have you on for another episode this season, we are doing Once Upon a Time in Hollywood at the end of the season, and a lot of people were jumping on to join that one.
Do people know that
Uh,
you don't like that movie?
I think so.
Okay,
I think so, but maybe I'll like it the
maybe I'll
third
like it
time
on the
around.
yeah on the rewatch.
Yeah, uh, but who knows? But if not for that, then we will definitely have you on at some point in our next season because the conversations are always great. You always bring a ton of insight and great great film knowledge. We get to film bro out a little bit.
Two guys who well, you took some film classes. I never took any film classes.
Yeah, but we definitely I had all of the posters in the dorm room. I think you had some of the posters,
I had a
some of the
couple.
film. Yeah,
Can't think of what I had. You definitely had Pulp Fiction.
I had Pulp
Remember that
Fiction and
for sure.
Goodfellas.
Yeah,
Total just walking cliche.
yeah.
Yeah.
It was worth. Those are two good movies.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, well, thank you again for joining. If folks want to hear more or read more of your film opinions, are you on the letterbox? Where can folks find you?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter, although not as much these days now that Maryland has hired a basketball coach. Um, at DB Wilson 2. I think I'm the same account on Letterboxd. I think I'm DB Wilson 2. Um, I post there every once in a while. I wanted to be the guy who wrote like good reviews on there, but who has the time?
Yeah, we
Just make
we
jokes.
all aim to be,
I know.
uh, you know,
Pauline Kael.
and just end up being single sentence bad joke guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm at on that. I'd like to get better, but if you want some more bad letterbox jokes, you can find me there.
One more letterbox
Yeah.
follow. That's just single sentence jokes on letterbox.
Yeah.
DB Wilson too. Amazing. Well, thank you again. Hope to have you on soon. And we so this was supposed to come out last week, but due to some scheduling conflicts, is out this week. So we're doing a double feature
Ooh.
episode today. You've got this, and you've got Treasure of Sierra Madre. So listen to that episode if you have not already, and then we'll be back again next week with on a regular cadence with First Blood.
Ooh.
So yeah, very excited to talk about
Yeah.
that one. Also, kind of a war movie, but not
Yeah, kind of a
really.
war movie. Post-war movie.
Post-war movie. Yeah. Should be a very fun discussion. Hope to see you all there. And as always, in the meantime, we will see you all in the wasteland.